Welcome back to This Is What the Gospel Sounds Like. We are a K-pop Demon Hunters podcast where we are looking for gospel handles in the hit movie, the platinum album of K-pop Demon Hunters. I am here to talk about part two with Andy Jones, and we started last time breaking apart This Is What It Sounds Like, the climax of the movie, the ending of the movie. And there's just so much here to talk about. We had to do a part two. So Andy, welcome back. Introduce yourself to us and tell us where you've been.
I'm Andy Jones. I'm an author and a pastor in the San Francisco Bay Area. We had to miss last week because I was not in the country. I was in Scotland visiting for, like, my wife and I were on vacation celebrating her 40th birthday, which is coming up.
Oh, fun.
So we had a lot of fun. I got to drive on the wrong side of the road for the first time. So that was very scary. And yeah,
How did you manage that? Because that's very scary. Did you
it, it,
prepare by watching videos?
no,
Oh,
I just focused. Like, I just told myself the whole time, stay to the left, stay to the left, stay to the left. Um, and it was
that's good.
hard, but I didn't die.
That
And
good job not
and
dying. I
and well,
Yeah, go ahead.
it was most difficult because there was one point where my wife is a big tree person. She's really into trees,
Nice.
and there's this 5,000-year-old yew tree in the part of Scotland that we were about to drive through, and so she made me go off to find it. And so we were down some, like, single track roads where you have to, like, pull off into the ditch that doesn't exist to let cars go by and stuff like that. So that was really the hardest part, but it was all good. Made it back safe and sound, all is well. And
Nice.
Scotland is beautiful, so I highly recommend it.
I also drove to Scotland from Oxford.
Oh, okay.
And, it was frightening, and we drove through the Lakes District. If
Ah,
you're a Taylor
yes.
Swift fan, you know about the
Yes.
Lakes District, and, it's terrifying because the
Yeah.
roads are so narrow, and, I think that sometimes my brain, driving on the wrong side of the road kinda feels like what my brain feels like when I'm trying to work in another language, where you just tell
Yeah.
yourself, "I can
Yeah.
do this," even though it feels like I can't actually, but
It's
you
more
do,
work, but you
and
can. Yeah.
yeah, it's just kind of a mental thing. Well, and you also just were an award recipient
Oh,
for
goodness. Yes, I was.
services to the church, Andrew Jones.
It's
Congratulations for
true.
your recognition at Concordia St. Paul. We are so proud of you. How
Oh,
awesome.
thanks. Yeah, I won an alumni award from my alma mater at Concordia
Did you
St. Paul.
defeat anyone? Was there any kind of face off
I
of
don't know. There were 3 award winners in my category. I don't think I had to, like, compete with them at all, but it's all good. It was an honor. I was very humbled and a little bit baffled to be nominated as someone who's so young for service to the church, but it was much appreciated, and people were very gracious and glad to be a part of that. So,
That's
yeah.
really cool. Well, congratulations. That's
Well,
that's really
thanks.
cool. And congratulations also to our girls who were just last night as we're recording,
Mhm,
were live on Jimmy Fallon
mhm.
and did an interview with Jimmy Fallon, which I thought was, I mean, I was like, how are we going to ever wrap up this podcast? Because more things keep happening with K-pop Demon Hunters.
I know.
And the conversation that they were having about how it was received,
Mm,
and the gal whose voice of Mira shared about an old man
yeah.
busking Golden, and then the voice of Zoe talking about a young child. It's kind of like this really beautiful thing of why this is connecting with so many people. I think because the story itself is about connecting with people. It was just so beautiful, and then to hear the performance of Golden live with EJ, who has, I think she has not performed for 11 years, like
Mm,
live,
mm,
and she's been suffering with bronchitis, and then just kills the performance.
mhm.
So great.
Yeah, and that was just on the heels of them being on Saturday Night Live, like, 2 days before that. So, like, yeah, it's pretty amazing. Obviously, this has hit the mainstream big time, but to
Right.
see them on The Tonight Show, to see them, like, in a sketch with Bad Bunny, like, this
I
is, like,
I
the
did have
highest
to
of high
look up Bad
levels.
Bunny. I knew Bad Bunny was the person doing the Super Bowl, but when I saw the sketch, I was like, "Who's this guy?" And then like, "Oh, that's Bad Bunny." So
See, I got
I love all the
introduced.
languages that were I'm like, what it's a beautiful moment. Are you a Bad Bunny expert?
Not at all, no.
Oh,
I got
oh, oh.
introduced to Bad Bunny, through all things, through professional wrestling. because he performed in a couple of, like, he was a wrestler in a couple of matches for the WWE. So
Fun.
I had that experience with him where I'm like, wait, okay, I don't know who this is, and he's coming out and everyone knows, like, it's going crazy for him. And so I've listened to some of his music, but I don't know much of it at all. But he's kind of iconic for being in a lot of things that are kind of random. Like, he was just in the, like, Happy Gilmore 2. Like, he's the caddy for Adam Sandler in that. So he's just all
Okay,
over the
that's right.
place.
I did watch parts of Happy Gilmore too. I didn't watch the entirety of it, but my husband enjoyed it very
Yeah.
much. I think it's a
And he's also, one of the biggest, I think he's got to be like top 3 streamed people on, like, Spotify, like him,
wow.
Taylor Swift, and probably, I don't know, Beyonce or something. Like, he's super, super up there
That's
for,
so cool. Well,
yeah,
that was a really fun sketch, and I never wanted to go to brunch so bad. I was
yeah,
like, I
it's
didn't
good.
know people could go to brunch and talk about K-pop Demon Hunters, so I think I'm gonna put that on my list
We should
of,
do that. Yeah.
things to do, have brunch, and also want to just put this out there, if you guys wanna come to Nevada, we have some very old bristlecone pine trees in Nevada that are, I
Yes.
believe, over 3,000 years old.
Those are on my wife's list of visits.
So
So
come on out,
yes.
and then we'll do
Okay.
brunch and maybe talk about K-pop Demon Hunters. It could
I think that
happen.
sounds like a plan. Yeah.
It could
Okay.
happen. Well,
Perfect.
I before we dive in, oh my goodness, this is too much. We're having too much fun. And I
We
just
do.
wanna
Yeah.
say to our listeners, you are making this really fun because you're sharing with us some different ideas and some of your experiences. And so this is something fun we get to do all together. And it's a good conversation starter. I got to talk with my mother-in-law. She said, "What is this demon thing you're doing?" I'm like, "Oh, well," and she doesn't have Netflix, and I don't think she could watch. I don't think she's a cartoon person, but I told
Hmm.
her it's been a lot of fun. I got a message from Facebook from a friend from college that was so cute because last night my son was telling us about how he found a podcast by some Lutherans about K-pop demon hunters. And I asked him if one of them was Sarah Crowder, and he was blown away that I know you, grateful for the work that you're doing. Can you imagine if you were like a teenage boy listening to a podcast and you talk, like, just drop it at dinner, and then your
Yeah.
mom is like, "Oh, I know her."
Right. Yeah.
So fun. So shout out to Raymond. Thanks for listening. Fun fact: our audience, Andrew, is
Hmm.
55% male.
Really.
Isn't that fascinating? I
That is
talked to our
fascinating.
statistics teacher. I was like, apparently, maybe podcast generally is a man thing or male, like a male centered thing. Although I listen to more podcasts than my husband does. But also, I think we do talk a lot about C.S. Lewis, Lord of the Rings, and those kinds of things. Apparently, we've got a lot of people listening. So thank you, Raymond. I'm hoping that if you're a listener, would you please share with us any fan theories or questions that you have? I
Yes.
have about 10 amazing questions that I got from a youth group in
Oh,
Adrian,
nice.
Michigan. They did a movie night. I'll have to, we'll have to share it when we do our theories. But
Hmm.
they did a whole youth group movie night, and then afterwards did a little bit of a Bible study. And then I told their leader Becky, I said, "Hey, have them share any questions," and they have some good ones. And so I'm
Nice.
collecting questions. So feel free to drop comments or send emails or Facebook messages or Instagram so that we can collect these and do our final kind of Q&A fan theory kind of close out in the event that we end the podcast, which it will come to an end because we have to put on a bow on it. But now let's dive back in. Andrew, last time,
Hmm.
this is what it sounds like. We talked about Rumi having this isolated kind of moment of like revealing her true self, her sinful
Hmm.
self within the, dare I say, congregation of the assembled people,
Hmm.
gathered and distracted by Guima. And with her singing awakes her friends, and they gather together, and there's this beautiful harmony moment where they are no longer divided, but they're being open and broken with each other.
Hmm.
And this is what their song sounds like. Not the fighting, but sounds like this harmony and also the reality of the brokenness that they are holding inside and sometimes hiding from each other. And so that's about as far as we got. And can I just say thank you? I've listened to your clip about talking about the voice of baby Jesus shattering the
Mm.
darkness. Like,
Mm.
so good. Like, so did you plan that, or was that
Not
just
at
like,
all.
because that was
Spur of the
so
moment.
That was so beautiful. That was so beautiful. Anything else you wanna remember from last time before we hop in?
I don't think so. I think we're just moving forward with the song. Like in my memory, they just like embraced in the movie,
Yes.
and now it's
So now
bringing the
they're
attack.
doing the walk, they're going towards Guima, and they're fighting it, and, it's the kind of the Gandalf moment
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the girls are kind of all the demons are kinda coming at them, and they're fighting, and Rumi's just, like, determined, and they're singing together, and the fans are starting to kind of wake
wake
up,
up.
and I
Yeah,
love the visuals of that.
yeah,
I feel like the visual of the kind of blue glow, the color design of this movie is
hmm,
fantastic because it's such vivid colors, and pink is kind of the evil demon color, and
hmm,
then this kind of blue, golden,
yeah,
also like this kind of contrast becomes this kind of change in the environment, and I think that's just a really neat thing. But then the audience begins to kind of wake up slowly. And then comes the moment where there is a break in the song. And maybe let's just review the lyrics. It says, "Why did we cover up the colors stuck inside our head? Get up and let the jagged edges meet the light instead. Show me what's underneath. I'll find your harmony, fearless and undefined. This is what it sounds like. My voice without the lies. This is what it sounds like. Our voices all combined." That's like towards the end.
hmm,
But in this moment, as they're going towards Guima, there's a pause, and Guima withdraws all the troops into himself, and he gets this massive form, and he shouts to the girls, "Your voices cannot defeat me." And then, is this now a Marvel movie? We have a beam ending, kind of ending boss battle, and
yeah.
Rumi is standing with her sword defending, and it's like this crucial moment. What was your experience watching that for the first time?
I think the first time I watched it, I anticipated there being like Rumi can't do this on her own, so Mira and Zoe are gonna have to help her, and they're gonna
Mhm.
like form some sort of, I don't know, some sort of
Voltron?
like Ultron thing. Yeah, exactly. In order to defeat him, like it was gonna be another moment of togetherness. When it became Genu that stepped forward, Genu was the one that sacrificially gives himself. I think that's, I don't know, I'm not going to say it was predictable, but you sort of saw Genu's redemption arc coming. You were hoping
Sure.
that that was going to happen. And as it happens, I think that sort of, it really, that's one of the moments, one of the many moments that lends itself towards this, here's a gospel handle.
Right.
One of the lines I think we've talked about before is Genu says to Rumi at a different time, he says, if hate could defeat Guima, I would have done it a long time ago. But it's not hate that defeats this king of demons.
Mm,
It's sacrificial love.
mm.
Genu gives himself in order to save Rumi, to save everyone, quite frankly. He sacrifices himself. And that's how Guima is ultimately defeated, is that, and again, this is sort of mystical and I don't really understand the dynamics of it, but Genu's soul somehow leaves him and provides a individualized Han Moon for Rumi somehow, and like protects her. And then she, runs at Guima, and that's the end of them. That's the end of him for now. Because I don't
Yeah.
know what they're going to do next.
Yeah,
But
there's a lot of unanswered questions for sure, but that the eye acting in
mhm,
this scene, because what's really cool is it seems like, and am I reading into it? I don't think so, because I feel like they put so much thought into every
mhm, yeah,
motion in this movie. The moment that Rumi is accepted by her friend captures Gino's attention.
yeah,
And there's this kind of like, is it surprise or just kind of like this kind of like hopefulness or just kind of shock of, had he just kind of given in to the idea that that Guima's just in control and he's got the power, but then he sees this moment of community and acceptance of the brokenness, and he's like, "What? Maybe there is hope. Maybe there is hope for someone like me." And then closer, you see his eyes where you can see almost the conflict of like, "What am I gonna do? What I'm gonna do?" And in the movie theater, we watched this with the kids, the agony. Even though
yeah.
everyone in that room, I think, had seen the movie. Actually, not everyone, because I went with one of my girls who hadn't seen it. It was her first time watching it in the theater. It's kinda devastating that he dies, is he really dead?
Yeah.
We don't, but
That's a
I
good
mean,
question.
it's
Yes.
definitely this. I always say in class when we would talk about vicarious atonement, we talk about
Hmm.
this idea of Jesus dying in our place. Instead of us
Hmm.
dying, he steps into our punishment and bears that in our place. And we always talk about how this is a really beautiful, I don't want to say trope, that makes it too trivial, but this is a very beautiful handle that we see in
Yeah.
a lot of any kind of good, amazing story has an element of someone going in the place where they don't deserve it and they take it in the place of someone else. And it's fun every year. We brainstorm ideas and every year there's new ones. And maybe this year when we brainstorm, a student will say it's kind of like Genu. Now, is Genu a Christ figure? I don't think he's a Christ figure, but this act of self-sacrifice always reminds us of Jesus.
Right. And that's an important distinction, right? Like there's a difference between a Christ figure and a Christ action.
Mm, mhm.
And almost all Christ figures in any media are going to be flawed in some way. They're not going to be perfect one-to-one Christ figures. But Genu does take on a sacrificial action, and sacrifice as a storytelling device is a really powerful one because you're giving up your own livelihood in order to save someone. It's a way of providing salvation for someone else that means your demise, or at least the risk of your demise. So yeah, it's a powerful moment, and I think it is something that people will like clue into, like to remind people of, this is what sacrifice looks like. This is sort of what this is like. If I can take us back just a little bit real quick.
Yes.
One of the things that I noticed that I think is also a good connection is I think that what's happening with the fans is an example of the harrowing of hell. Are you familiar
Harrowing
with
of
that
hell.
concept?
Tell me more.
Okay. So the harrowing of hell, the way that I've had to describe this to people in the past is to use a different movie or book in order for them to get it. So we're going to go to Narnia again, Chronicles of Narnia.
Yay, let's go.
So after Aslan dies and is raised, he breaks into the witch's castle where
Yes.
there's all these stone figures, right? All these
Yes.
animals and creatures that have been turned to stone. They've been petrified. He breathes on them and they come back to life. They're animated again.
Mhm.
And this is an example of what theologians for a long time have talked about as the harrowing of hell. When Jesus descends to the dead, he goes down to the dead in order to free them, in order to proclaim victory. And I feel like that's sort of what's happening in this scene within, this is what it sounds like. Rumi is breaking in. Everyone is in hell, essentially. They've
Yeah,
been captured. They are, what's the word?
dead.
They're deceived.
Yeah, they're
Without
deceived.
without someone saving them and interrupting what's happening, they're going to be condemned. Okay. They're going to be eaten in the language of the film. But Rumi breaks through that.
Mm.
Rumi saves them one by one. Like she saves Zoe and Mira through her voice, and then they continue to save everyone as they turn them from that, pinkish shade into the blue shade. They all are awakened and realize what's happening, and they're saved from that. And that's really what's happening throughout this entire song. Obviously, Genu's a part of that. But to me, this is another example of that concept of Jesus breaking into the kingdom of Satan, freeing all those who are dead as he goes into the place of the dead and brings them out victorious as he
Mm.
rises from the grave. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
Yeah, well, we talk about this in our Who is Jesus unit. We talk about humiliation of Christ and exaltation of Christ.
Hmm.
And we look at the Apostles' Creed, and this descended into hell thing is a little bit of a mysterious passage because there's not a lot of biblical text that helps us understand, like, what does that mean? I mean, is it Second Peter? Like, it's a very
Yeah.
small thing, but it's important in church history, and it's a sign of Christ's victory
Yeah.
over Satan. It's not, I think sometimes the students, when they hear that and they're not familiar with the story of the Bible, they sometimes think, oh, Jesus went to hell. Like,
Yeah.
what does that like? I don't think we really talk about hell in depth as maybe as we could, but the promise that we have here, and what I remind the students is what Jesus is doing in the creed when we're talking about this is he is going to show his power over the devil, that battle is done.
Mhm.
and proclaiming his victory over the devil. And I think that's confusing because sometimes the students, they look around and it feels sometimes like the devil is still in control or winning, or
Yeah.
as if God's power is not as strong as the devil. What would you say to someone who's like, it seems like right now when I'm looking around at the landscape, it feels like the devil's winning. But what
Yeah.
we know is that Jesus has defeated the devil, but yet he's still prowling around like this roaring lion. What would you say to someone who's feeling that overwhelming despair?
Yeah, if they were carrying their nerd card with them, I'd bring them to Lord of the Rings, and I would take them to a part that gets taken out of the movies, which is the Scouring of the Shire,
Yes.
because in the films they kill off Saruman, at least in the extended editions. But
Yes.
in the book, Saruman doesn't die at Orthanc. Saruman escapes and he goes to the Shire, and he doesn't have any of his power, right? He's lost his staff. He can't really do anything as a wizard anymore. But what he can do is he can lie. And he
Mm,
uses just his voice to enslave like the entirety of the Shire. That's essentially the world we are in with Satan right now.
yeah.
Satan's powers are hard to define,
Yeah.
but his main way of getting at God's people is to deceive us through his voice, through his lies. And it really looks like Saruman is winning because he is. It takes someone to stand up to him and defeat him. And sometimes it does look like Satan has gained a lot of ground in our world, but Jesus still fights for us, and Jesus' promises still remain that he's going to come back and bring us into the new creation, and Satan is not welcome there. For people who are feeling that, like, the world is just such a mess right now, like, I get it. I am with you. I understand. It feels like that to me too, but Jesus' promises remain. He is coming back. He is with us even when we are suffering here and now, and there's something better waiting for us in the new creation.
That is what the gospel sounds like, right? It sounds like Christ's completed work. Like the work of salvation is done. The work of defeating sin, death, and the devil is finished on the cross. We're still dealing with death. We're still dealing with sin. We're still
Yeah.
dealing with the devil, but the victory has been completed. We're just kind of in this aftermath as we wait for Christ to return. And I think that the lie that I hear some of my students repeating to me is that maybe that Satan has more power than God, or that
Yeah.
or that, you know, or that God doesn't really understand or has abandoned us. And that's just not true in the sense of these are not equal things. It's not like Jesus versus the devil is like a really like Jesus has soundly defeated the devil, but the devil still is a threat to us. And I think when I'm putting myself into the movie, going back to K-pop Demon Hunters, and I'm listening to music and I'm singing it and I'm kind of remembering the story. Sometimes I think in our human nature, we want to exalt ourselves too much and put ourselves in this kind of seat of power and
Hmm.
decisions.
Yeah.
But the reality of my Christian life is uh, I'm participating and I'm receiving the goodness of the work that Christ has done. That he's, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
not like, okay, kids, you better go fight Guima or you're going to, you know what I mean? Like, when we're thinking about the Christian life, the battle has been won and
Yeah.
we are free. And we are now in this now not yet world where we are getting to console each other and in community be praying for each other and offering support, also fighting the evils in this world. But the battle and the pressure and the performance of sealing the Hanmu, that's not on our shoulders. That's on Christ, and that's a good news too.
Yeah, and that reminds me of, like, one of my favorite psalms is Psalm 121, which repeatedly talks about how God is our keeper.
Mm.
He's got us. So if we're going to talk about God being a keeper, like, let's go to sports, huh? So if you like hockey, soccer, lacrosse, there's a goalkeeper, right?
Well, I went immediately to Quidditch, but keep going.
Quidditch. Okay, we're really going super nerd on us.
Well,
Okay,
I
that's all
mean,
good.
like that, like you said, keeper. Isn't that one of
Yeah,
the
that's that. You're right. You're
chaser,
right. You're right.
keeper? Yeah,
It's all good.
I know about Quidditch, but anyway, keep going, keep going. I can do with sports. I'm focused.
You're good. So the keeper is Jesus for us, as if we're on his team. And he's so good that he's never going to allow a goal, no matter what happens, right? Which gives us that freedom to participate in seeking to advance what he's all about, advance the kingdom. And we see that in the film because while you go to any concert, the fans are going to sing along, right? But there's something a little bit different in the final song where they're not just singing along, they're
Mhm.
like singing their own parts. They're
Yes.
participating in this different sort of way.
Yes.
And that is really kind of beautiful to me because like some of what they're singing is clearly like they're humming golden. And you noticed something I thought that was really interesting in the humming parts.
Well, I mean, it was driving me nuts for
Yeah.
weeks because I was listening to it over and over. I literally had one of my students, like, in the hallway of school, and I was, like, forcing her to listen to my phone, like, and my husband, like, turns to the corner, he's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I really need someone to figure this out because
Yeah.
I know she's a musical she's got a very talented ear," and I was like, "Tell me what's happening here." Finally, with that a cappella version,
Hmm.
you can hear the hunter song from the very beginning of the movie, layered on top of the descant of Golden, layered on top of this is what it sounds like, and it's just it
Yeah.
is a picture of what we have in the Psalms,
Yeah.
what we have in the Bible. You know,
Hmm.
the Bible, all of these kind of echoes of the themes through Scripture. Thanks for bringing up the trees because I always think this is a beautiful kind of arc in
Mm.
Scripture of these trees, that we have the tree in the garden and we have Jesus dying on the tree of death and punishment on the cross. But then in Revelation, there's this tree theme of that the tree of life is now here, that was at the beginning, is now here at the end, but it's for healing.
Hmm.
And the song at the beginning is the same song that they're singing to begin again this new Hanmoon. It's this beautiful voices are present. And so this idea of sports concerts and the church is interesting. I had a professor who liked to kind of talk about liturgy and the experience of going to church like going to a football game
Hmm.
in some ways.
Hmm.
And I really had to figure out what that meant. And I don't want to try to this might offend, but I think that the Eras Tour made
Yeah.
this more sense to me in the sense
Yeah.
of the experience of going to that is something that it brings all of the people together. Taylor Swift wasn't doing the Eras Tour for herself. She was doing all of that for the fans. And I think maybe in some ways football players too, I'll give them a benefit too, that they're doing that for the fans. Like football during COVID was so sad, right? Like went
Right.
to an empty stadium, like it just wasn't what it is.
And church during COVID was so sad because it was doing it like this, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And to treasure what we have in the Psalms as this songbook of the church of all
Hmm.
time, the words that we sing with Christ, because the Psalms are the words of Christ, the prayers of Christ that we get to join in, and that we get to be part of the service in the sense of when we are in
Yeah.
church and we're singing together these
Yeah.
ancient words. And honestly, I was thinking too about the Magnificat and how much the songs that we have in the Bible are embedded into our worship that we do in the Lutheran Church. It's just, there's so much beauty that we get to do together when we are in worship and when we're in God's word. And it's, I think, an invitation for us to, if you haven't been to church for a while, to go and sing and participate in this beautiful moment, recognizing it's Christ doing this work, this completed work, and offering himself to us and offering forgiveness to us. That is what the gospel sounds like.
Yeah. That's really good. And I think I'll add a little bit to what you're saying
Go.
about the Han Moon stuff because we talked a little bit last time about how, the old Han Moon has to break for the new Han Moon to be established.
Hmm.
And I think it is really beautiful that like the new Han Moon is established with some of the old Han Moon music still inside of it. There's something to that I think we can pull some of that from our own experience with the whole tree of life in the Christian story is we were barred access from that and now that access is being restored to us.
Yeah.
So there's something to that there's probably more than I'm going to say, but I just think that there's a beauty to that I think connects to our story.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's fun. Well,
So
I
good.
think we'll pause here. Is there more that we could say about this is what it sounds like? 100%. And add your thoughts, add your comments. If you are listening on Spotify, you can rate the podcast. That would be fun to do. If you are watching on YouTube, you can share what's your favorite lyric from This Is What It Sounds Like. I'm going to keep listening to this song, and it's going to remind me of what the gospel says. Jesus on the cross says it is finished. And when we're singing and we are joined together in worship, we get to sound like the gospel to each other, hearing the good news that we are forgiven and free in Christ Jesus. This is all really good news. It doesn't sound like division. It sounds like our voices combined. That's so fun. All right. We'll see you next time. We're not done. Share any ideas with us, and we will talk some more.